Venom. Kukuduku, the rooster screeches. Shiva lies on the mattress, stretching his stiff body. He tries to overcome the laziness that seeks to control his drowsy mind with a long, loud yawn. The well is crowded with chattering ladies and the atmosphere is rife with their high-pitched banter. The clatter of utensils mixed with the animated conversation between his wife and daughter drifts in through the door. Kavita is helping Yashoda with the course. What a good girl, he thinks, always ready to lend a hand, never says no, unlike her brother. He stands up and stretches, throwing out his arms and filling his lungs with the clean morning air. He turns his head and looks down at Raghu, who is sprawled on the thin, worn-out mattress beside him, snoring lightly. Shiva smirks, shaking his head. He can't even recall the last time he had days as carefree as his son's. Uncle? He turns around to find his puffy-eyed neighbor's son, Ansh, half running towards him. Raghu is still asleep, Shiva says dismissively. I'm not here for him. Ma sent me for some smoked tobacco to clean her teeth. She told me to hurry because she has to go to work. I need it fast or she will taunt me about it for a week. His words are accompanied by a dramatic eye roll. I don't have any left. The stock got over yesterday. I could smoke some fresh, but it will take time. Oh, the boy says, mulling over the offer. Not waiting for a reply, Shiva takes out his chillam and starts cleaning it with a piece of cloth, which itself is not particularly clean either. He inserts a small stone and then fills up the pipe with the mustard-colored tobacco. He lights a piece of cotton with a chakmak, his very own flint, and steel lighter, and brings it close to the head of the chillam. The orange flame engulfs the tip, and Shiva takes a long, satisfying drag. After he has had a couple of puffs, he takes out the smoked powder and hands it to the boy, who races towards his house without another word. Shiva squats on his doorstep, cleaning his teeth with a neem twig, and glances around. His neighbor, Ansh's father, is clucking at his cattle to guard them out of the shed. The women at the well are busy discussing their husbands and mothers-in-law, critically describing every little trait and exaggerating some to gain sympathy from their fellow sufferers. Some boys, complying with their mother's commands, are carrying little paper bags of grocery back home, stealthily munching on small chunks of jaggery as they go. This bustling cacophony is what Shiva calls home. His infancy, boyhood, and adult life have all been spent here. He loves this place, but he knows now is not the time to get nostalgic. He has work to do. He sets out to go from house to house. His mission is to look for someone willing to labor in his field for a nominal pay. Half a dozen doors later, Sitaram, along with his wife Kamla, agrees to help reap the crop. Shiva's offer makes Sitaram uncomfortable, but he has seen worse. Shiva makes his way back home and after a quick bath, sits beside Kavita to have his breakfast. He steals a quick glance at the now awake Raghu. Shiva smiles at Kavita and puts his arm around her shoulders, squeezing affectionately. He helps himself to a mouthful of warm poha from the plate. He notices that Yashoda has added extra peanuts, some lemon juice and chilies, just the way he likes it. He watches his children eyeing the dish, their mouths watering, so he feeds them spoonfuls too. But, as always, it proves to be too spicy for Raghu, who rushes to the kitchen with red eyes and a runny nose, seeking solas and mugs of water. Shiva shakes his head and continues eating with a tiny hint of a smile on his lips. Suddenly, realizing that he may get late for the fields, Shiva hurriedly shoves the rest of the poha down his throat, while Yashoda ties their afternoon meal, sorghum bread, potatoes tossed with brinjals, onions and green chilies, in an old piece of cloth. It takes them half an hour to reach their farmland. Sitaram and Kamla are already there, awaiting Shiva's instructions. An immense sky stretches endlessly above their heads, over the trees and beyond the hills. Rivulets of sweat run down Shiva's forehead and find their way down his kurta, which is soon drenched. The heat scorches his skin and he feels like he will melt any time now. By early evening, he decides to take a break. His throat feels dry as sand, so he goes to the stream to have a sip and then sits under a tree along the river bank, gazing at the undulating mountain range silhouetted in the horizon. The trees sway in the breeze. The lull of the soft flow of water makes his lids leaden, and soon sleep engulfs him. He doesn't feel the reptile slithering up his foot. A sudden, sharp pain jolts him awake. Locating the painful area, he spots 2 little pinpricks of red just above his left ankle. The snake glides away unnoticed. It takes a few seconds for him to realize what has happened. Sitaram! Yashoda! Help! Kamla Bhabhi! He wants to run, but his feet refuses to budge, partly because of the stabbing ache, partly because he is so mortified. They come to him running. Hey Bhagwan! Sitaram mutters as he notices the serpentine trail on the wet soil. Kamla, quickly run to Sonu. He's in the next field. And ask him to rush here with his bullock cart. Tell him it's an emergency. Go, hurry, he commands. Kamla dashes off, hitching up her sari so she doesn't trip. In the meantime, Sitaram tears off a piece of his dhoti and wraps it tightly just above the bleeding wound. Yashoda is frozen with shock. Her expression is one that Sitaram will remember all his life. Pooling tears threaten to spill out on her sun-tanned skin, which suddenly looks a shade paler. Her eyes are wider in shock and horror. Her eyebrows are arched high on her forehead and her mouth hangs open. Fellow farmers from adjoining fields rush to Shiva's rescue, fear writ large on their faces. The cart is here, shouts Sonu from the road. Come on, lift him up, yells Sitaram. The men hoist up an immobile Shiva, put his arms around their necks and carry him as fast as their weary legs can to the squeaky cart. Yashoda trails behind, sobbing. Everything will be okay. Yashoda manages to mumble to Shiva in soft whispers as he lies on the wooden planks of the cart. They are both drenched in cold sweat. The cart rattles away, rocking in rhythm with the tinkling bells around the bullocks' necks. Nausea engulfs Shiva and he starts retching, but in vain. When they finally reach home, the traditional healers, the Veds, are waiting at their doorstep. The news of Shiva's snake bite has already reached them and there is quite a hullabaloo in the village. A swelling crowd surrounds Shiva's house as dusk descends on the village. Kavita and Raghu are standing in far corner in their grandmother's arms, too dazed to speak, not wanting to watch the goings on. Yashoda runs to them and holds them in her arms. Everything will be fine. Shiva can vaguely see his family, scared and helpless in this distance. He wonders if they will ever sit together as a family again. The treatment starts and Shiva is given bitingly acrid neem leaves and pungent green chilies to chew on. The villagers expect to see a cocktail of bizarre expressions flashing on Shiva's face, but none of that happens. Shiva's tongue fails to detect either the leaves or the chilies. Everyone knows that he will not be out of harm's way until the procedure yields the desired results. And so it begins. While Shiva sits as still as stone, the local snakebite experts take their positions and start whispering the crucial snakebite survival incantation. One in each ear and one right in front of his mouth. They chant with their eyes closed, in complete synchronization. If any of them falters, the chant will not work. What am I going to do? God help us! Yashoda's wails punctuate the procedure. It is now Shiva's turn to perform. Sitaram proceeds to pull up a bucket of water from the well. A woman is asked to sacrifice a few strands of her hair, which are then put in the water, and Shiva is asked to look at it. Snake! It's a snake! He shouts, his eyes wild with terror. Save me, somebody! Hey Bhagwan, have some mercy! Kavita realizes that the effect of the snake bite has still not worn away. She sees somebody hand her father 2 glasses full of cooking oil. She can read on his face that while he is unwilling to go through this part of the treatment, he wants nothing more than to be done with this whole nightmare. As she watches silently, Shiva grabs the brass glasses and gulps the contents down in one go. Come on, come on, come on. Everybody seems to be thinking the same thing. Come on, nothing. Everyone looks on in dismay. But then it starts. Shiva's eyes bulge. His hands clutch his stomach and he finally disgorges a waterfall of vomit. The poison's out. The temple proceedings are all that is left now. Yashoda is overjoyed. Shiva looks weak, pale and pretty much done with life. Everybody is delighted that he is vomited and the experts are wearing proud smiles. But it's not over yet. The poison may be out, but the snake still possesses Shiva's soul. Leading the way, he is made to hike all the way to the temple at the edge of the village. Lord Hanuman is invoked to cast mercy on the poor man, to free him of the snake's charm, to keep him hale and hearty for the rest of his days. With the prayers now ascending to a crescendo, the bucket of water is shown to Shiva again. This time, however, much to the relief of everyone present, Shiva identifies the strands of hair in the water. The villagers let out a collective sigh of relief. Yashoda and Kavita run to Shiva, and his mother follows. Kavita pulls him into the tight hug. Shiva realizes that when everything goes downhill, the light at the end of the tunnel is nothing but the people you love. Yashoda has always been a constant pillar of support in his life, irrespective of whether he has reciprocated. His mother's sacrifice and care is beyond description. His daughter is the sweetest little angel the world has ever seen. And Raghu? He sees Raghu standing beside them, awkwardly, not knowing how to act, not sure whether he can do what his sister is doing. Remorse stabs at Shiva like a million knives. He has led his own son to distance himself from him. He extends an arm to Raghu, who smiles and takes it, and is pulled into the warm family huddle. Following the obligatory overflow of emotions and a tearful thank you to the Veds, Sitaram and Sonu, the crowd disperses for the night. She sits under the mulberry tree with a pen in her hand and a diary on her lap. It had been a parting gift from Anjani, a remembrance of sorts. Anjani had known that Kavita could be made to leave home any moment. The past year had been her last in school. Her parents work as laborers for most of the year, doing odd jobs here and there. So money, like the devil it is, tends to put them in a fix. Her dropping out of school means that they now have one more member who can earn and one less child to pay school fees for. This has elevated the stress on their pockets. Moreover, Kavita would have had to go to Mahogiri for her class 11th, which would have required even more money, and this was just not feasible. She sees weary children returning home from school as she sits in the shade, pondering over what to pen next. Maybe a beautiful theme for a mesmerizing piece of art. Lost in the rabbit hole of her mind, she is jolted back to reality by her mother's shouts. Yashoda is running down the street. Kavita? The children around her stare and snicker, but she pays no attention to them. What, Ma? Kavita calls, slightly annoyed. There you are. Get up now, hurry, run back home and change into the green sari I have kept out for you. Wash your face and tie your hair into a braid. The family is reaching in an hour. I will get some milk. Oh, okay. She walks back home, diary in hand, the pen wedged between the pages, the dream of creating something beautiful lost in her head. The next 60 minutes pass in a blur. She reaches home, sweeps the floors, sets everything straight, gets ready, prepares the customary poha, makes rangoli at the doorstep, and basically tries to pretend that their life is lived in an organized manner instead of being a series of spontaneous ideas and actions. When everyone is ready, the family sits in a corner like neat showpieces, trying not to mess anything up at the last moment. Ansh's grandfather had told them about a boy she had said didn't know much about his family other than the fact that they live in Kappa and are considered relatively well off. They have half a dozen buffaloes and 6 acres of rain-fed farm and plan on building a new house. Ansh's grandfather had been a good friend to their family, but after he had passed away, communication between them had ceased. After a few more moments of bated breath and smoothing of crinkled clothes, there's a knock on the door. Come, please come. We have been waiting. Ansh's grandmother has been summoned to keep the small talk going. Kavita walks in, holding a steel plate on which sit 6 glasses of water. Even with her eyes down and her head covered with her pallu, she can feel every move of hers being observed. The pressure is colossal. Her palms begin to sweat, and while handling a glass out to her potential mother-in-law, she almost drops it, which would have surely led to the death of the proposal. The two families wear their best smiles and demeanors and adhere to every courtesy demanded by social norm, all the while dissecting every significant detail of the other's lives. And of course, both parties scan the other with critical eyes and conspicuous scrutiny. Every single gesture has to be perfect. There is no scope for unimpressive moves. The meeting is adjourned with promises to get back to each other with the next step, if any. Kavita knows that her own opinion does not matter and that if her parents miraculously agree with each other, there is nothing she can do to prevent the marriage. And this is exactly what happens as soon as the boy's family leaves. Shiva can't stop smiling, which is rare, and Yashoda's excited banter seems without end.